case on FaZe Clan, because I'll tell you what, I've always heard the rumours behind the scenes. I've heard certain people's takes on, like, why did Twist leave? How did he leave? What happened with Rops? How did he go on a free? What were the players they signed now? Who could they have had? Could they have signed Simple? Did they choose not to? Did they just not bid enough? So I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to maybe look into that, because actually this particular move with FaZe Clan now makes me think, actually, someone does need to sort of like put, not necessarily the truth, but like more information out there about that. Like, what is going on within their org? Like, who is it who's causing the issues? What are the holdups? So that's a case I'm going to open, but maybe you do just like opening classic cases. Well, if so, then check out my partner, CSGO Lock, where if you use my code in the description box below, you can get 10 free cases and a 100% bonus match on your first deposit. Okay, so FaZe Clan has benched Elige, the player they only signed for this year, and signed Jacob, who is a player that a lot of people actually watching this video are going to go, who? They may be even going to think, Jacob, you mean Jacob? No, Jacob. That's his name, J-C-O, and then 3 Bs. That's the way his name is spelled. So first of all, let's just look at some of the social media about this and see the way it was actually announced. So first of all, there was just this announcement that said, FaZe Counter-Strike update, we have mutually come to the decision for Elige to be moved to the bench and out of our active lineup. He remains with FaZe as we consider our options going forwards. Now, here's the problem with this that I'll immediately translate for you. Is, first of all, they're doing this actually, believe it or not, to be respectful to Elige and to make a distinction between Elige leaving the roster and this new guy coming in, even though, yes, to you or I, doesn't really give that much extra respect or prestige to Elige. And, as far as we can tell, he is replacing Elige. But you're trying to almost put a layer of abstraction, because what you're trying to do is be like, hey, things aren't working out with Elige. It's even implied by the mutual decision part in some of the interviews recently. Like, both parties know it's not working. And in fact, by saying we've mutually come to this decision, and initially that Elige is just staying with FaZe and we're considering our options, you're actually almost trying to imply we're not saying he's the problem or he's bad, or that the person coming in is directly to replace him or do what he couldn't do. And he's still going to be with FaZe, a la Brokey, where it's like, he could still return in the future if it doesn't work out, which, by the way, is also implied with that JL Makaze move, which is another move that classically they said was mutual. Now, I think that is absolute nonsense. Like, I'm sorry, I just do not believe that Elige moved all the way to Poland, lives in, like, what looks like a fucking barracks, like, bare apartment because he's traveling all the time, plays, goes through all the stress and the strain of playing in Europe, away from your family, playing in FaZe Clan, a team that's actually struggled most of the year. He hasn't gotten, quite frankly, I think, like a reasonable lineup of players compared to other players who joined FaZe, but he gets all the pressure of that and is treated as though he walked into like the FaZe that won all the prestige of it in 2022, and he's just underperforming in Twist's roles. None of this is true, by the way, and he's treated like that. And so I'm supposed to believe after that he just went, you know what, just put me on the bench, isn't it? Or I'll just go and play in a worse team. You know what? I don't think it's impossible if the rumour was that, you know, a Liquid or something like that wanted him. Or obviously the dream would be an RV or a G2. Or something. If someone like that wanted him, maybe there's a world where it's like, it's not working out. We need a roster move. Are you one of the people willing to move on? Or have you already felt uncomfortable with the team? Okay, I can believe there's a degree of mutual decision when it comes to this, but I'm sorry, there is no such real thing as a mutual decision in this case. It'd be extremely rare. I think this actually just looks like either he said, remove me first, or FaZe just said, we actually just want to replace you. We just specifically, you aren't a culture fit, or you don't fit something about our team, or maybe you don't even fit the attitude or the profile of the player. Maybe we want a young player that we can mould and is malleable, whereas you're more set in your ways and, you know, you kind of have your way of playing the game. And we've tried that way and we don't want to play it. And then we've tried our way and that didn't work either. So we're just going to move on. So they put that part there, by the way, as we consider our options, so that you don't overreact to the Jacob guy and put too much pressure on him, even though, by the way, as far as I can tell, he is just the new player, isn't he? And also, you want to try and signal to other teams, even though this is not going to work, like, Elige's still really good, though, and this was a mutual decision, so we're not saying he's bad. So if you want Elige, well, hit me up. Maybe I can make some sort of a deal, since he still has that contract and all those options. So you're also trying to almost be like, we're not letting him go for free, you have to buy him. There's that aspect, first of all. Then there was Elige himself, did this comment here. He just put, thank you for the ride, from everyone at FaZe. End of a chapter now. and we'll be starting a new one coming soon. Now, obviously, the coming soon part is quite telling, especially if the notion is he in any context was fine with being removed. This almost implies he's got something set up already, or he's almost got that solidified. Okay. Could be true. It just seems implausible. It's a better place than FaZe, let's be real, unless there's a big shock move coming that I'm not aware of. Then also, you had the one where they'd signed the Jacob guy. Then they said, well, time for a new era. What do you mean time for a new era? I thought you were exploring your options with Elige, and he's just on the bench now. And, let's just see what happens. Yeah, that's not a call, of course. You've let it slip it. It's time for a new era, isn't it? Jacob's your new player, not Elige. Elige's there for anything. He's not only on the bench, but his own tweet implies he's leaving, isn't he? He's going elsewhere. Whether that's like something he had to arrange after the fact, when he knew he might be removed or leaving, or he already had some feelers out there. Here's the thing that people won't get. It's quite complicated. If I ever do indeed do the video I hinted at in the opening of this Here's Go Look thing, one of the reasons why I'd like to do that is because it's not as simple as you can hear one side of the story, and that is true. Everyone, I won't say they have their own truth, because there is only one objective truth, but let's say everyone has their own version of events. Like, there are cases where, let's just say there are people who have left FaZe or joined teams like FaZe where maybe they wouldn't have joined the team, but they were having issues in their other team. They put out the feelers to a team like a FaZe, or FaZe asks them, oh, would you be interested? And then it's more like when the right breakpoint comes in their other team, they join the FaZe. That doesn't mean they were always going to join FaZe. They definitely want to leave that team, and FaZe was the dream destination. You get my point? So, like, for example, I have heard it is true that there have been multiple times, more than once, and over a bunch of years now, where Twist's not only considered, but could have gone to Vitality, and maybe that was even a move that was on the table more than once. Now, to you, that happened once. You heard about it. There was a rumour towards the end of FaZe Clan, and then he didn't do that. He went to Team Liquid and made a super team, and ever since he was in IGL and then in the team, right? So that's what I mean about how much more complicated it is. So I don't know that the way this is messaged already seems like a little bit fugazi, but I get it. You just want to, this is a fairly professional way to do it, to be fair. Now, the first question, I normally do that approach where I say, should the team that removed the player have removed the player, and then should they add the other player? But I have to ask this question that you're all asking yourself if you're in the chat, right? Which is, who is Jacob? I mean, I've even heard when I listen to some like Polish people, he is Polish, talk about him. They were even saying almost like Jacoba or something, like some weird way to pronounce it, but we're going to say Jacob because that looks like the way he's written it. Well, if you don't know, he was a player that was in 9, but not the 9 you're thinking of. You're thinking of the 9 that was way back at the Blast Paris Major, where they were actually supposed to be the tier 2 team that was going to do all the damage along with Monty, but famously they bombed it in the group stage. It was actually teams like Into the Breach did the run. He was with them, but not that version. He was with the team at the end of the year when they'd lost a bunch of those players that you might have known. Then afterwards, most recently, he's played with the Apogee, aka BetClick, because it depends based on the sponsorship, what name they were putting for that, which is most famous if you watch the PGL events for going to that PGL Bucharest and actually kind of shocking a lot of people in the Swiss stage with some of the upset wins they were able to get. And he was one of the players on that team who had some of the best stats and looked like one of the better players. A key detail that everyone's noted as well is it seems almost impossible it's a coincidence that Carrigan's wife, who I did that interview with, remember, who was a sports psychologist and works for Apogee BetClick, his most recent team, was working with that team, is also the wife of Carrigan. Presumably they talk. And then lastly, what Neo, the coach of FaZe, is Polish. Like, this all just feels like it's just convenient, isn't it? Like, you essentially have an extra in on who that guy is. Also, you even have a coach maybe who could have a cultural relationship with him that you might not have with just a random player like an Elige coming into a FaZe clan, right? Now, I will just say, I do think this figure does seem like a prospect, but I want to immediately make a distinction. We're not talking on the level of a Kiyosuke, a Tanae even. These are players where you see them early on, the eye test immediately tells, oh, there's something really good there. That's legit. But I'll tell you what, just to show you this much, I will say, if you go to the Twitter of Frog, who was the former coach of Endpoint, who worked with Bravado, he had a thing he did, I'm assuming at the beginning of the year, where they're his bold predictions for the year out of players that are up and coming. And what he's done is he's just updated this now that this player's joined FaZe. And he's done 20 players, and as you can see, most of them have joined teams already. Now, interestingly, I'm going to guess this must be in order of how good they think they are, because he's got Kiyosuke first and Mikaze, and these are all players I've checked out. Jambo was a very eligible prospect as an AWPer, got signed for big money, was the biggest signing ever in Fnatic history. You go down, everyone heard Grix apparently had a whole bunch of people going after him. We already knew Kenzior anyway. Netiu obviously went to ENCE. So you keep going down, Mordoi came along. Jacob's actually 10th. Fair enough. So he's not all the way down. By the way, Thomason guy seemed legit, didn't he, when you saw him playing that Bestia team or whatever? So it's not like it's someone at the very bottom and some barely referenced person that you don't even know. It's not one of the top prospects, but this actually seems, from watching his POVs, appropriate. Like he's like 10th out of 20 possible people. That actually seems fairly legit. And then also, as like I said, if you just go and look, the only LAN they played this year was this one here. It was PGL Bucharest. It was the one where they lost to Furia. I think this was actually the old Brazilian one. Yeah, this is the old Brazilian one. They lost to Furia in the opener. They beat Mongols. This is already when Mongols is very good, by the way. They beat Astralis, but this was at the end of the Cadian era. They lost to Aurora, who was in theory much better than them. They actually lost to FaZe, because FaZe at all those PGLs would just always get out the group stage somehow. So the only LAN they played this year was that LAN. Oh no, there was two, I think. I think there was like one other LAN as well they played, but it was just like not that great or whatever. And basically, if you look at that LAN, let's see, we'll go to players. Overall, okay, Hypex. He is the AWPer, so you'd expect him overall to have the better stats, but the Jacob guys are up there. You go on the T side, doesn't look so crazy. CT side's pretty good fragging, but here's the key thing. You go to T side opening kills, and yes, he is the guy, along with Prism, taking the most attempts, and actually his success rate was kind of a bit whatever at that LAN. It wasn't that great. You go and look at all of the year with online play. They're obviously mainly a tier 2 online team. You go look for the whole year. Actually, he's one of the best players in the team, along with Hypex. You go look on the T side. He's doing a lot of the work for them. Much better success rate. Decent amount of attempts. So I can see why people wouldn't want him instead of an Elige potentially. Now, let's do the FaZe aspect of this, because then I'll get into, when I talk about should they have added Jacob, how good I actually think he is as a player. So first of all, the first question obviously is, should they have removed Elige? Now, I'm obviously a massive Elige fan, but guess what? I was a fan of Rain, I'm a fan of Carrigan, fan of plenty of people in the game. If it's not the right move to have that person in the team, then you want them removed. If you're a fan of Elige and you think it's the right move to remove for Jacob, then you just think about what other teams he could go to. It's like he has to be in FaZe Clan. In fact, that's a key point about the idea people have to be in FaZe Clan that I'll get to in a minute. I would say, first of all, if we look at this year that FaZe has had Elige joined the team this year, and you go and look. On paper, Frozen is the best player because of the overall stats, but he also plays a bit more lurky, and in fact, obviously trades Elige a lot of the time. Actually, Elige would be one of your best players. Like, these are just pretty good stats all in all. Not amazing, but pretty good. On the T side, by the way, he is massive for your team. Absolutely massive. On the CT side, he just frags well. Frozen is the monster fragger there, and actually Brokey's done decently in terms of kills, just not very good rating. You go and look, though, T-side for the year on LAN, that's Elige right there. Now, you would never believe that from seeing what fans say. You would think he was some trash can. You think, there's no way. It's the reason they're not as good, because they can't look at other factors, like the fact that the other FaZe players aren't the players they were in 2024 and 2023 and 2022, for that matter. You go look on T-side here, round win percentage. FaZe actually, believe it or not, it's the 7th highest T-side round win percentage. And Elige is one of the main reason why. Opening kills, they are something like, what, how many is that? 9th in opening kill percentage. Now watch this. When I go to opening kills, T-side, Elige takes a pretty decent amount of attempts, and he gets 50% for the whole year. Those are very good T-side numbers, by the way. And then you consider, wait a minute, but you just showed me that FaZe is like 9th or whatever in opening kill percentage. And then you go look who else does the opening kills. Rain and Carrigan just feed. So that means actually Elige is just carrying that opening kill percentage, by the way. And if you want to go more recently, the last 3 months, In the last 3 months, look at the fucking success rate. They're slightly better, but look at his success rate there. Now, certainly his CT hasn't fragged at the level I would have hoped he would have done. Something's been off about the chemistry in this team on CT side the whole year. They've never made it work. Their T side's not bad, but even then they have massive problems with factors like, look how broke he plays for the year. Even on CT side, when he should farm, he has decent kills, but there's a reason why the rating's trash. On T side, by the way, he just never attempts to fucking open it, if you don't know. Absolutely zero, like open it. Not really, but like very, very low. Even compared to people who you're told are like defensive AWPers and stuff like she wrote. So they take way more attempts than this guy does. So to me, one of the weirdest things is, I actually think on T side, which is how most people model the game and look at if you should change a player, they very rarely talk about a specific CT spot. On T side, he's done excellent work. And he's one of the main actual factors for FaZe you wouldn't want to lose. Meanwhile, Rain and Karrigan are both feeding, having a really hard time. And I don't know that this is the right player to add to do that, because can he do what Elise just did? I don't know that he can actually. My biggest problem essentially is this. Beyond things like vibe, maybe where you are mentally, what your demands are at this point in your career, I actually think in the server, there's no universe where you remove Frozen, Elige, and maybe Karrigan. Keyword maybe. There's way bigger issues in FaZe Clan. Like the obvious ones to me, immediately, is the fragging of Rain and Karrigan combined. In isolation, both could work. Like if you had a Blitz or an Apex, like a better fragging IGL, you could probably make it work with Rain and he'd be a really solid like role player. Although he did give up. If people don't know, this is where it's complicated. Early on, he gave up a bunch of spots to Elige. Elige was doing well in them, and then Rain struggled elsewhere. Since then, they've given some of the spots, keyword some, back to Rain. They've tried shifting things around. It just didn't work. It just didn't bring much more performance. And all you need to know is people still mega overreact to the odd Rain map performance. That's good, which tells you he doesn't consistently do it. They're just doing that thing of like, your royalty, we love you, you are Mr. FaZe. So every time you do a good game, we're going to go on about it. And every time you have a bad game, yeah, it's someone else's fault. Who was the last one to join? Who was the guy after Rops? That's what you do, basically, if you're a hater or you just don't like Elige. So my problem with Rain and Karrigan is this. You can't have both. We've got to that point. It's a bit like Chopper and Magix. To me, they both just fragged too low for the team that they were in. You go back in time, Edward and Zeus. There's nearly always an era exists in Freiburg towards the end. There's always an era at the end where you have two players, usually one's an IGL. And if the IGL is really low fragging, your question becomes, is he a good enough IGL? If he's a good enough IGL, then we need more fragging elsewhere in the roster. So you either need, and by the way, this doesn't even always work, because in the case of like Chopper and Magix, you already had the super carry, you already had Donk. It's just then you needed even more firepower, probably from the third position, Zontix's position. So in this team, you don't have a Donk, so forget about that. I mean, you were trying to, maybe if you'd have done the simple signing, then I think, well, it's not really trying to have a Donk there. For me, you were more trying to be like simples, like more like old Brokey, and then you've got like the do it by committee again. You've got Frozen, who's pretty solid in his own way. You've got Elige, who's pretty good in his own way, and then you have simple, and then you have the 3 stars and the 3 different styles of star play, and you rotate through them, and depending on the map and the side, people pop off. So unless you can get a super carry or a bunch of big name teammates, I think you have to pick one of these two to cut. And the most obvious one, I'm sorry, is Rain. Unless Karrigan's going to become the coach, you're going to need an IGL if you cut Karrigan, and how many IGLs can come in? Meanwhile, can someone come in and either just frag in Rain's position or play more supportive? Seems like it, right? And then you've got the whole Brokey equation. I mean, Brokey's fallen off hard. And we're talking hard. Like, I wouldn't even mind, it's not even about stats. If he had the impact in the server, if he just did Brokey plays, because to me, the dynamic of what Brokey brought to FaZe is why he was a key part of that team. And why, yeah, I wouldn't have cut him last year. I would have given him more time. I even thought last year, most of the time, he was pretty good. It was only towards the very end he had his issues. But after the first season this year, I do think he deserved to be benched. I don't think he should ever have come back. I think it's just because they couldn't make the simple deal work. I'll even also throw out there one other thing, actually, which is I saw that actually Nero suggested that actually Jacob is kind of a 1-for-1 for Elige in terms of his opener roles, and that he says if you watch the FaZe vlogs, that apparently Elige wanted more freedom and more control. So instead, the idea of bringing this guy in, who presumably Karrigan's wife has at least told him like what he's like psychologically or what he might be like to work with. This guy's going to be more malleable. He's going to be more of a soldier and just do what he's told, right? Elige, to some degree, is the guy who he's already an established, known quantity, former superstar, star player with a very decorated career who's here to win championships. He's not here to be good even or just to be a pro. He's here to win championships. That's why he's taken this sabbatical year or two in Europe, right? So you can understand there could be a back and forth that won't exist with Jacob there. I could see that angle. But my issue is this. I don't think Elijah ever got a proper shake in this team. Am I the only one who misses this? Like, first of all, he got a Brokey that was shit. The Brokey of last year had times where he was actually the best player. He was actually the player at times in the second season that would be carrying FaZe and would have the big series. And it would actually be Rops that was kind of like not doing his fucking job. Frozen was fine the whole time. Rain and Carrigan had their own issues depending on which season we're talking about. So first of all, if you're Elise, you joined this team and you never got the Brokey that Twists and Rops had. By the way, it was the same for Frozen in its own way. It's why actually FaZe has been diminishing returns these last few years. When Frozen joined instead of Twists, he maybe got some of the Brokey that Twists had, but then he never got the Rops that Twists had. You think about that. Rops had, like, early on he struggled in 2024, and then at the end of the year, he just had that glow up at the major. People forget, aside from that, he was having all sorts of problems. So I think both these guys, I feel for both Frozen and Delige. Like, I think of Frozen, I think, mate, he must just look and see mouse spots at, like, every final and semi-final, and now beating Vitality, you just go, fuck. I'm like the one guy who shouldn't have left mouse, I guess. Same as if you're now Elise joining this squad, you join thinking, they're going to do me like they did Twists. I get my chance to go to a European team and have an awesome person like Carrigan, and I have all these like dope European players that know how to play the game, and I don't have to like berate people or mind game people. I just have to do my shit, shoot with the crosshair, and then I get to win all the trophies, and you're not even in any bloody finals. You're never getting close to a trophy. And then people are looking at you and going, it's all your fault. Even though, by the way, all I'll say is this. I think Twist's actual fragging and numbers are completely fucking mythologized in that FaZe Clan run in 2022 going into 2023. And by the way, he fell off way harder in 2023. Like, people forget in 2022, he was one of the only ones who wasn't really the one who was like constantly contending for the MVP. Of the three, I mean, even Rain got one, obviously, because he got the fucking major MVP, didn't he? Actually, Twist was the one that sometimes did look like he had to either sacrifice or he wasn't as big a fragger. So I don't even think actually that Twist played that much better in FaZe than Elise does now in a different role. So I also think if you're only looking one for one, it's never going to be a fair comparison. So you never got the same Rops, you never got the same Brokey that Elise had. You can even argue he didn't get the same Rain. This is 3 years later. He can't just play forever. He's not just going to be 45, still doing like 1 in 5 maps, he top frags or something. This is not going to happen, is it? So to me, he got Frozen, who was good, but sadly has never progressed beyond a certain point. He plateaued when he joined this team, and he never did become a top 5 player in the world. For me, if he ever was even ranked top 5 or 6 in stats, that's because other people were like inconsistent or they were just off their game. For me, he was always like a bottom end of the top 10 players in the world, but a very good player and a solid player. By the way, he actually seems to pair very well with Elise. They're really good like trade duo on T-side. Then also, Rain and Carrigan, as I say, both got way older, and you don't have the mega carry, and eventually one of them's going to have to retire, isn't he? Even though Rain's saying all that mad shit like that. I guess this will be my last 5 years with... What the fuck are you talking... Me your last year now, if anything. Like, what are we talking about? Like, his FaZe just going to be a fucking go the way of NIP and Fnatic and just gradually drop off year after year. Supposedly FaZe is supposed to be a championship roster that tries to win. So if you want to keep playing CS for 5 years, you can probably do it. But you've got to go to OG. You've got to go to fucking 2 Fnatic. You've got to go to these smaller squads. You can't do it in FaZe. Do you want to be a one-club guy, then you have to retire, that's it. You can't just play forever, or it'll be like Olofmeister. We'll just be diminishing returns year on year. We'll also be going, remember the old Rain, just like we had the old Olof, and we'll just try to awkwardly look away from your bad performances like someone's fucking granddad at Christmas who's pissing himself or whatever. You just think, that's sad, isn't it? Think of him at his best, and you'll help him, won't you? Like, it just gets awkward and you look away, don't you? Then also, the other reason I have so few reasons to think this is the move is, one, I don't think this one player move was it anyway. This wasn't the player you'd remove. And also, this wasn't the move that fixes the whole team. They have way bigger problems than just what Elise was doing in the team. I don't even think that was that big a problem. Or whatever you think he wasn't bringing to the team. I've already seen, it's like Na'Vi. The reason why one roster move was never going to do it in Na'Vi, because one, you're not signing a superstar. And then two, you've already tried everything. I already saw that Blade tried all the different veto switch-ups in Na'Vi. And clearly tried changing some of the dynamics in the team and the structure. And it just didn't work. Same with FaZe. If you haven't watched this year... Aside from when they locked into eventually doing the permanent train bans, They were willing to go all over. They've even mixed up some of the bands. Picks have been all over the place. They just picked based on the opponent. They've already tried the whole map pool. They were even trying to make Anubis work before it got removed. They have been all up and down that map pool. This is not some scenario where there's an obvious swap to do. They tried everything. They've even tried, like I say, messing with some of the CT spots and changing up some of the roles a little bit. It just hasn't worked. And I don't think there's some like extra thing or obvious like old style that they can bring back from last year and just put people's different names in different spots and go, right, let's rework that. They probably tried that in practice, it just didn't work. To me, these are two teams, Na'Vi and FaZe, that are at the end of their tether. They've tried it all. They've got really smart figures in the team. So now all you can do is a roster move. You know, normally people get mad at the idea, the first thing you do is a roster move. These teams haven't done that. They've had their struggles and they've tried everything they could during the season, and now they're in a position where they're trying to make the big move. And let's be real, FaZe, I'm just going to say, I don't think this was even the move they wanted. I think they did want to sign Simple. I think when it was going on at the major, they thought this was looking really good. No matter what he and they say now, I think that was the move that was supposed to happen, but for whatever reason, they couldn't either get kicked up their arse and get on with it and get the signing done, or they didn't want to pay what Na'Vi wanted, and Simple had to go his own route, and now that really is off the table and they've forgotten all about that. And now we're having to pretend that Brokey coming back and being a little bit better but still nowhere close to the Brokey of past years, plus a like good but not incredible Polish prospect who's probably a poor man's Elige is a good signing. That's what we have to pretend is a good fucking angle. And also, the Simple angle at least gave you the dream that, like you see him grinding now, the more he played, the better he would get. And who knows, maybe in 2 or 3 months, not like almost around this point in time, but let's say a month from now, on LAN, he could actually have been comparable to what he was in the Swiss stage of the major. Again, not the best player in the world, but a top 10 player in the world. And all of a sudden, if you had that, plus Elige doing what he was doing on T-side, plus Frozen's overall game, plus some good calls from Carrigan, suddenly you have a team. Suddenly you have a team that could be 5th, 6th or 7th best in the world, that could actually maybe make a run and be in a final, maybe even nick a PGL type trophy. Instead, you've just got a team where it's like, are you even going to be as good as FaZe was in season 1? I don't even know if that's the case. You might make the odd semi, that's about it, right? So since to me, I know, I'll just throw this out there as well. I know it's also no one, if you want to talk about CS royalty, it's not just Raid getting fucking protected, boys. How about fucking Neo? I don't get this. Everyone's telling me all day long about how Zonic needs to be fired, this guy needs to be fired, that guy needs to be fired, but Neo's name just never comes up, mate. What is it? So just because this guy was the GOAT of 1.6 and then was like a very good role player in CSGO, why do we have to pretend? You all bagged like a motherfucker on Taz. Mate, I don't even know that Taz has always had insanely better rosters than Neo. I think if you look at the time they've worked together as coaches, it's debatable who had the better roster. Maybe at a point in time last year when they got the Snacks roster, maybe it was a better roster for Taz. I'd say before that, arguably, Neo had the better roster. So you look at both of them. I mean, people love to bang on Zonic, they love to bang on Taz. They never fucking bring Neo's name up. You wouldn't even believe he coaches. I notice he still collects the checks. I notice when they win, people go, I've heard in a demo, actually, he said that he looked that up. Well, was he responsible for any of the losses? So there's another role that they don't seem to ever consider can be moved in fucking FaZe Clan. So to me, at least from the outside, at least, wasn't the problem. And my issue is, this is why, in a way, it is good for both people that they move on, because first, Praise needs way more than just this one move, and Elige needs to get to a better squad. Surely he wasn't just here to make playoffs, or win the occasional game, or have to battle really hard to beat like an Aurora, or a fucking Heroic, or a Furia, or something. Surely Elige was here to win championships, like I said. Surely the whole team, in theory, are here to win championships is the point in their careers where if you're reigning Carrigan, that's why you keep playing, surely. It's not just for the check anymore, right? You want to win a few more prestige events, majors, cut more trophies before you close your career out. See, there's a lot more to this case. Instead of adding Jacob, right? I'm going to assume the reason why you're signing, like not even a super fit. Like the joke is, some people even said, this is the best up-and-coming Polish prospect. It isn't. That's Kaspersky. That somehow went from ENT to NIP, and he was an academy player before that, so it's not even true. But I'll tell you what, once you move past Kaspersky, who looks really crispy to me, by the way, I do think this guy looks good. He just doesn't leap off the page. You have to sort of drill into it a little bit. I think this implies that the FaZe Clan org, this is why I say I'll probably do a video on it, they just look like they won't make moves in a timely fashion. They won't actually hit deadlines. They won't spend appropriately. And so you're having to go for people who are either like big names who will join for cheap or at the end of their contract, or you need people where they're just really cheap. And you have maybe the in this case, like the BetClick, Apogee, Sports Psychologist angle, that you like know a little bit extra. You have some like insider info that an outsider wouldn't have. And that's why I mean, the real question is, why aren't the Gamer Legions of the world picking this guy? Why aren't G2 picking him up? Why aren't an IP Fnatic? Why aren't these teams getting this guy? There's a lot of great scouts out there in Counter-Strike who know these players. So it's a bit interesting that this is the play you've ended up getting. With that said, the wife angle's not a terrible one. If you really have extra information and you do know that this younger player has like comparable skills to Elige, but he's maybe got a mentality that's more moldable. I will say, by the way, when I actually watched some of his FACEIT POVs that had comms in, he was comming in English with these like English language speaking squads of players, just mixed teams. And he actually did seem like he had decent comms and he would comm properly as he did his entry moves, etc. And it seemed like he had perfectly understandable English. He wasn't speaking in some ridiculous accent with Zs everywhere like all the fucking Poles normally are. It sounded totally legit. So I could believe he's someone who has like a good mindset, etc. By the way, I don't hate on this move. It's just more to me, you've signed a small name that might not even be as good as the player you've replaced, and you're sort of just hoping that's enough to hastily patch up the glaring holes and flaws that had nothing to do with Elige. Like, this is a player where I'll say he has good aim, not insane aim, but good aim. I think he has consistently good to very good spray. Like, his AK spray is good. His M4A1S spray is really good as well. That aspect's really good. If you want to watch probably the best game I've seen of his career from the ones I watched, go watch from PGL Bucharest when Apogee Betclic played against Mongols on Nuke. Both sides of that game, he has some really impressive, like, mid-range kills on. And remember, Mongols are some legit players. These are guys who, not that long after that, were in the final of the major and have won some massive series and actually have been able to beat a lot of the lower level teams. They're sort of a gatekeeper of the elite, aren't they? So I thought actually he'd give a very good account for himself. Obviously, that was the Globe game. He has an aggressive entry player style. To me, the one part I have a problem with is how many of the people saying this is a good move have gone with the angle of like, oh yeah, I watched his games and he's better in this sense than Elige, or he can do this in the game that Elige doesn't, or he adds this other factor, that phase, that no one's saying that. Everyone's doing either like, one, Elige didn't fit the vibe, or from interviews, maybe we can intuit and read between the lines, like Elige wasn't happy, or they weren't happy, or they couldn't get on the same page, or the vibe fit. And the worst one of all, the one that actually just fucking does my nut in, is the one that goes, hey, I remember when, like absolute NPT shit, I remember when FaZe signed another guy who was not very well known. He was called Brokey. And do you know what? He ended up being good. So that means this is a good move. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What does that even mean? How would them signing a Latvian player right before like the online era, because actually FaZe at the time couldn't and wouldn't spend much money, and it was just someone that people like Nico had apparently played with in FaZe. Why would them signing that player, who by the way was primarily an AWPer later in his career and had to do that in FaZe even at times, why would them signing that player and who then, by the way, when they say got really good, he was like decent for the first couple of years, and he got really good like 4 years later or something. It's like 3-4 years later. How would that be comparable to this in any context? What does that even mean? That's just some stupid cargo cult thinking. Now, by the way, in terms of what happens to Elige now, that's a very interesting question. Look, I don't think much happens for FaZe. I don't know if this makes them better. I don't think they make any semis. They're not going to win any trophies. I don't really give a fuck. And actually, it actually somewhat sours me on FaZe. Like at this point, now it feels like people I liked, like Rain, are just holding everyone back. People like Brokey, I have to pretend he's just going to be awesome. Whereas actually I've seen no signs right now he's ever going to get back to being the really dynamic player he once was. But if I look at Elige, I do think there's many destinations he could go to. The obvious dream, a lot of people I've seen have said it on Twitter, is Na'Vi. Na'Vi needs a player like him. It could be in Imma's spot. I think if you put him in Imma's spot, in fucking farm, mate. I think I also would love... I thought it would work with Karrigan, but for whatever reason, the rest of the team isn't there to make it. I think it did work with Karrigan on T-side. I also think he would actually enjoy playing in a Blade system. I've heard from one of my little birds last year, I said it on all the talk shows, I heard he asked to be a Na'Vi. I've heard basically, I think it was at the end of the first season when Na'Vi had the little drop-off after winning the major and Imma's stats were all shit and everyone was criticising him and people knew that they need like semi-aggressive AWPer who's going to be like a voice in the team and get some input. I've heard Elige just straight up when he was in call just asked to like join, like, can I get into this squad? And for whatever reason they didn't want him. I think you revisit that if you're Na'Vi. I don't know that they will, but I would do that immediately. Also, Team Liquid itself. Look, I've heard... he was vetoed at least once by Twists previously, maybe for the super team. And then even after that, maybe they considered him and he also wasn't allowed to come. So if Twists is there, it looks like he can't join then, doesn't it? So I think personally, if you Twist, just get over it, mate. In fact, the reason why I'd let him rejoin if I were you is because one, it means if you then choose to leave, you soften the blow for Liquid. And two, beggars can't be choosers. Like, you've had this terrible fucking last 2 years, and spoiler, you're not getting in Vitality now, are you? So forget going to FaZe Clan now after that. Like, how would that fix anything? To me, if you're Twists, you just humble yourself and say, I'll tell you, we'll give it one last dance. There you go, a real last dance of actually good players. Let's see if we can work together again. Obviously, we can't have any of the problems of last time. Maybe here's some guidelines where we have to meet culturally in the team. It can't be your team. Or if Twist is really going to leave, then yeah, Leash comes in and you maybe even take his spot. Maybe you do it that way. I also think if you look into his team, if you have Shuhei and you have Nertz and you have a Leash, you could fucking cook already. Now let's pop in a better AWPer, and isn't Liquid closer to championships and deep runs than FaZe Clan was? I think G2, I know they've just made all these moves and they probably won't. If I were them, I would have considered an Leash type player. I would do it right now. I think that's even the star power you right need. As you've seen, people like Malbs are good. He can be in the team with Malbs, by the way. The problem obviously becomes, are any of these people, in your brain, can you hear in 6 months, and the MVP of the Budapest Major is Malbs? Really? You would have said yes last year, but you wouldn't now, would you? Let's be real. He doesn't quite have that same pop that the Nikos of the world, the Elysias of the world have. Fnatic themselves, I know they're down on their luck, but actually a player like this could be the one that is the piece they need to become a top 15 team. Gamer Legion themselves, I know it's a lesser squad. You're probably not going to win the championships or get the big salary, so that sucks, but you'd get to work in a squad. Look what fucking Ash just did with Rez. I'll even throw out there the other teams. How about NIP? I get they've already got ex-Kaspersky, but I'd prefer this. If you put Elysian in U-Jerk's position, wouldn't he fucking be a monster in that team? And that team's already a bit canny. Heroic themselves, they look like they could use another star rifle. They're about to lose to Nair. And then lastly, I know it's a bit of a reach, but people have always suggested you have to consider it. If they've got the money, how about a short-term move to PC game? Pop Elysian there with Nexa, with Castanito, with fucking Simple, and want to... Yeah. All of a sudden, that team could actually do something. Admittedly, we're tier 2 online, so that one probably is the least considered, unless it's just short-term, get some nice salary, play with Simple, and then let's both show off our talents and get to bigger squads for the Major. I want to say one last thing, which is about FaZe as an org. I'm going to do some other content about this, but this is one thing I think needs to be said. They have always had this problem behind the scenes that supposedly they were really slow to move on transfers. This is what Yanko complained about back in the day when Nico was IGLing and they had to keep getting those like replacement IGLs that were all washed people like the fucking Neos and Adrens of the world, and they wanted to get Alex when he was in Vitality, but they couldn't make that deal happen, and then they wanted other people but they couldn't make those deals happen, or FaZe wouldn't reach out, or they wouldn't agree on the price, or they kept waiting too long and delaying it. So the reason why I hate this is, first of all, they have been really slow to move. That kills you in the past. It kills you even more in the modern day, where people are really quick to sign people, and there's so many people scouting the next talents really early in the pipeline. So you suddenly the Molodoys and the Tenays are gone. The wrinkles are gone before you even get a chance to see that they were good at the LAN and go, hey, I should maybe say, oh, it's too late. They've already gone to some other squad with a 3-year contract. The Flamuses of the world. Then you've got FaZe has also simultaneously shown that they will hold on to other names for too long. Olaf Meister, Rain, Brokey. They'll just pretend it's past years and just keep remembering with rose-tinted glasses on all the fucking wonderful nostalgia of those players, forgetting that right now they're not doing the business. And also, most crucially, the most brutal thing I think for FaZe is that they've let the roster degrade. They used to have this one where they had the best IGL maybe ever. They had a really good role player piece in Carrigan and Rain, and then they had these 3 stars that all I ever said was they were perfectly mixed because they were well set up in terms of how each of them did something the others didn't. But you also then there were 3 real bona fide top 20 players. Low-end top 20 players, or their best years, like bottom of the top 10. But you didn't need to have a top 5 player. You haven't got that. You haven't had that for ages now. Like, if we stopped this year, you would maybe put Frozen and Elise top 20. But even then, they'd be like, again, like 19th or 20th. You wouldn't have the third person there. There wouldn't even be anyone close. And so the worst thing, in my opinion, is this. By letting it degrade year on year, and not sticking to that we do it by committee and we will cut the Olafs and Rains when it's time to and we have to make the ruthless choice. Something that seems like Vitality have done, by the way. By not doing that, you're no longer what FaZe used to be for the last year going on, which is you were always 1 piece away from the top again. Now you're 2, if not 3 pieces away. 3 potentially with this Elige move. You're not going to make that up, especially with an org that isn't quick and mobile to move, doesn't seem like it has a lot of money or wants to spend money, and then has players where if they get sick of it, like the Rains and the Carrigan, they don't even just necessarily go, right, reload. They'd maybe just go, I retire. So already, if you're FaZe, you have misplayed your hand so badly in the last 2 years. You went from the team of the year in 2022 Still a really nice dark horse contender in 2023 for everything. 2024, you had the brief pop where you got back to number one overall, even though maybe you weren't actually number one in the server. And then the latter half of the year, you even got the miracle run one last time at the major. And what did you parlay all that into? A team that now, for real, isn't on the same level as Mongols and Aurora. A team that actually, you go and look at other squads out there. I'm going to say an extreme statement. Even though right now in the server, FaZe goes deeper in tournaments than Team Liquid, Team Liquid's closer to being at the top than FaZe is. Team Liquid could be one piece away from the top. Might even be in a leash. FaZe is not one. The joke is, you could take any one piece and it wouldn't do it for FaZe. You could actually put Donk or Z with one FaZe right now as a one-player move, and I don't think that would even make them number one. That's how far away FaZe the org is now, and how they've let the culture and even how attractive a destination their team is become. And this is the era where, as an international squad, you have everyone available to play for you. So if you're a FaZe fan, I'll also leave it on this. I don't think you've even been serviced now. Because you might think, yeah, but I love Brokey, I love Rain. Let's be real. Gun to your head, you'd rather have Elige and Simple over Brokey and Rain, even if they're not traditionally FaZe players. First of all, they can have their own generation in FaZe. And then secondly, the latter, Brokey and Rain, are broken down, aren't they? They're not as good. So you can have them in the squad and cheer for them, but you're going to cheer for them losing matches and being irrelevant. If you'd have had Elige and Simple and kept Karrigan and maybe even found a way to keep Rain, I think you'd have the best of all worlds, wouldn't you? And there would be this real hype that if Simple got better year on year and month on month, like he seems like he's doing now, that then you suddenly could have a top 10 player in the world as one of your players, and then you have two other top 20 players. That's FaZe Clan. That's what everyone wants about FaZe. Then you have the superstar player in terms of Simple, who also is going to make the Brokey-esque plays, the dynamic, aggressive mid-round AWPing that takes some of the pressure off Karrigan and also means that you always have to question, like, where are the other players in FaZe? What are they doing here? Is he going to aggressively pick? Instead, you've ended up with what? Broken down Brokey, old-ass Rain, wondering how many years left he's got, Karrigan just doing interviews where it's like he just whiplashes between, like, we can do it. It's like, oh, fuck, it's all terrible, and the squad's... And then now we're just signing, like, no-name Polish players going, oh, fingers crossed it's another Brokey. It's just a bomber. There's not even anything to cheer for.
I don't forget the people that support me. And in the case of this video, that would be Matt Pugnaccio Rakula, Jason, Jensen Gore, Nikki, Tosh, Toucan, and you know who I'm always going to give the biggest shout out to, my boy Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to find out who the next guest is on one of my interviews that I've already recorded but not yet released. Or maybe you want to take part in one of those fabled long-form discussions where you get to decide the topics. Well, if any of those perks or others tickle your fancy, simply click on the Patreon link in the description box below and put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today.